Okay, we'll start our discussion. Thank you for joining at 8 o'clock. We were here in the predictive parsing table. What we did was we are in the context of parsing, in that we are looking at top-down parsing. What we did was in the top-down parsing, given a grammar for a language, we constructed the first and the follow sets. Using the first and the follow sets, we constructed a parsing table, and in that we identified what productions to apply whenever you are recursively descending into a particular non-terminal, when we see a particular terminal coming in. So using this we were able to construct this parsing table, and we also discussed that once you have this parsing table, the job of the parser becomes relatively easy. It just starts from the starting symbol and goes on applying the productions whenever it sees a particular token coming into the input. So let's try to run this on let's say some example string and quickly, and we'll be able to figure out how the parsing happens. So let's run it on, let's say, id plus id. So it starts with capital E, and therefore on E on id it tries to apply this rule, E deriving te prime. At this stage it applies this rule, but it has not consumed the input, and therefore the input still contains id. From here it tries to descend into t, and therefore it applies the input is still id, and therefore it applies t arrow ft prime. From here it applies for f deriving id. This consumes the input. Once it has consumed the input, now the next token is plus, and once this f completes, it goes back to the t's rule, right? And now t prime is the next non-terminal to be derived from. On t prime, on plus, we have t prime deriving epsilon, and therefore this particular rule completes for t. Therefore we go back to E, and now E prime starts. From E prime on plus, we have not yet consumed plus, we have E prime deriving plus t prime, and so on. So this is how finally it is going to give you exactly the same syntax tree as we had constructed for top-down parsing a few slides ago. Right. Let's look at an erroneous example. So finally you will get E deriving id plus id is accept state and so on. Let's talk about plus id. E on plus does not have any production, and therefore this directly gives an error. id plus, so initial part is going to be the same, f deriving id and so on, and that is going to be brought here, then t prime deriving epsilon, so that comes back here in E. At E prime stage, we have not yet consumed plus, so E prime on plus tries to execute this part. At this stage, plus is consumed, right, and then we try to recursively descend into t. Since plus is consumed, we are at dollar, and therefore t on dollar is the production to look at, and there is no such production, and therefore this turns out to be a syntax error. So this is how it's going to be. Any questions on the predictive parsing table? Okay, so let's move ahead from here, and we are going to make use of this to construct an LL1 parser. So the algorithm for whatever we did, I'm just going to put that as an algorithm in the algorithmic form. So for each production, A deriving alpha, right? There are three different parts that we have. The first part is processing terminals using first, then processing terminals on nullable using follow, nullable meaning that it derives epsilon, and then the third one is process dollar on nullable using follow, right? So these three parts I'm going to write for each production. So for each terminal A in the first, that is the processing of terminals using first of alpha, table of this table is the same predictive parsing table that we have. This non-terminal on this terminal, I am going to add A deriving alpha, right? Because alpha, first of alpha contains small a. Similarly, if epsilon, this is for the nullable, if epsilon is in the first of alpha, then what should you do? You have to worry about the follow set. Follow set of whom? Okay, good. Yeah, so it should be follow set of A because alpha is deriving epsilon, right? And therefore we have to look at the follow set of A. Yeah, and then if B is in the follow set of that, then we are going to add AB as A deriving epsilon. So this is similar to what we saw, for example, E prime deriving epsilon and so on. Then the special case of dollar, which just says that if this dollar is in the follow of A, then just add table of A dollar as A deriving alpha. This we need to do for all the productions, and that gives you the parsing table. And note that the functions that we are using here are first and follow, and nothing else is required to construct that parsing table. Of course, the creation of that parsing table, that is the geometry, what are the columns and what are the rows, that need to be figured out. Okay, so let's come to LL1 grammars. So whatever, so predictive parsers, whatever we did just now, that in general can be implemented using backtracking. And although the example that we took did not require any backtracking, but in general it will, predictive parsers do require backtracking, right? So you apply some production, it doesn't match, and therefore you go back and try another production, right? So that is a possibility. The reason being that we were looking at only one look ahead. It's possible that you might be required to look at multiple look aheads. However, the special class of predictive parsers which do not require backtracking, right, are called as LL grammars. Right? So, why it is called as LL? The first L in this is the how you scan the input. So you have scanning of the input happens from left to right. The second L is about what is the derivation that you are using. We are always using the leftmost derivation. So in case of ID plus ID, it's the first ID that we are going to derive. One is the maximum look ahead that you can have of the tokens. Right? So you might not require look ahead, that is zero look ahead in some productions, whereas you might require one. In general, we can talk about LLK grammars. And it so turns out that until early 90s, people used to believe that LL1 parsers are kind of practically useless because people had the belief that the table that it might generate might exponentially blow up. However, people figured out that, researchers figured out that LL1 parsers actually cover most of the programming constructs, and therefore they are used in at least in some of the special domains, if not all the programming languages. Some important points that no left recursive grammar can be LL1, right? As we saw that you will have to go into the same input token, same non-terminal again and again. And no ambiguous grammar can be LL1. So ambiguity occurs quite frequently. I mean, in English it occurs more so, but also in programming languages. For example, somebody in Accenture told me one sentence which said, my Jaguar has a lot of gas. Right? So this is an ambiguous statement, and whether you are talking about a vehicle or an animal, or whether you are talking about a stomach upset or a diesel or a fuel, right? So that becomes an ambiguous statement. Without the context, we are not able to understand what this means. Okay, so in NLP you will encounter a lot of such examples of ambiguity, but of course there is more to NLP than just ambiguity. Well, right. Any questions so far? Otherwise, we are going to look at specific aspects of LL1. Okay. So whatever we did just now, that actually is essentially LL1 parsing. Oh, I see. Yeah, one question just for me to understand that you have understood what is mean by LL1. Where can you use RR grammar? Bottom up parsing. Okay, it's a good guess, but it's a little wrong. In the bottom up parsing, we'll actually use something else. Okay, if nobody answers, then I'll give a hint on this one. So in bottom up parsing, we use LR grammars. Now, does that give any hint of where we will use RR grammars? Top down post order. Sure. Yeah, that is right, but it's too technical. In the general setting, see, we are talking about parsing. We are not really talking about, I mean, of course, we are talking about programming languages, but I think you guys are too much into programming languages. In general, can you use RR parsing somewhere? Okay, so you can use RR parsing for parsing sentences which are written in languages which are going from right to left. For example, Arabic languages, if they are going from right to left, you require that the rightmost, the scanning of the input happens from right to left, as well as the rightmost derivation needs to be brought out first. Right? So in such parsing methods, we will use RR language. Okay, so that was good to wake you up. Let's talk specifically about LL1 grammars. But essentially, that is exactly the same as what we have seen so far, just that we have to understand it in the context of LL1. So, grammar is LL1 if A deriving alpha or beta are two distinct productions, they are not the same. And whenever that happens, then there are some conditions which are satisfied. The first condition is that the first of alpha and first of beta are disjoint sets, which means that I cannot have A deriving small c capital Z or small c capital Y, right? Because the first is going to contain the same small c. And this is going to be one requirement for the first of alpha and first of beta. Why is that required? Why should the first condition be necessary? That is correct. Right? So our look ahead is only one, and therefore we want to distinguish across these two productions. Right? If we are unable to distinguish across these two productions, what will happen in that cell is that so A deriving small c x and A deriving small c y, A's row and small c's column will have two productions. As soon as you have two productions, you are unclear which one to use. Right? So there is an ambiguity in the grammar, and therefore it's important that we have, since we are talking about LL1 grammar, we just have one look at, and therefore the first of these two, you are able to figure out which way to go. Okay. So if epsilon is in the first of beta, it is about the follow set. If beta is nullable, then the first of alpha and follow of A are disjoints. That makes sense. This just follows from the previous one. And similarly, if first of alpha is nullable, then the first of beta and follow of A should be disjoint, right? The intersection of these, these should be disjoint, not the intersection. The intersection should be empty. So, okay, so our predictive parsing table for the grammar that we have seen, that itself is an LL1 grammar, because we were able to look at the first token that is coming in, and based on that we were able to make a decision. So just a few noticing points about this. So each entry contains a single production, that is maximum one, I should say maximum one production. Right? Each entry the empty entries correspond to the error states. Right? So whenever you reach a particular E deriving plus, that is our plus ID as the input, that means that it's a syntax error. Each entry uniquely identifies an entry, I should say production, and signals an error, that is also given. So if there are multiple productions in the entry, then that grammar is not LL1. Right? So if there are multiple entries, like I was talking about A deriving CX and A deriving CY, there will be multiple entries in A, C, and that doesn't mean that the language is not LL1. It just means that that particular grammar is LL1. And that can be sometimes written. Some of these grammars can be rewritten. For example, in this case, left factoring, removal of left factoring will help us to figure out, to make the grammar acceptable in the by the LL1 parser. However, so elimination of left recursion and left factoring help us in getting the LL1 grammar, but there exists grammars for which no LL1 parser exists. There exist languages for which no LL1 grammar exists. Right? So that is what is the last point. Right? And we'll look at an example for this. Okay, so let's construct a parsing table for a particular example. Right? So let's say that you are given this. So the predictive parsing table that we have constructed, our goal here is to use that to parse an input, to create a parsing table for LL1 parsing. Right? So since these two are synonymous in our case, although the procedure that we have seen, that can as well be utilized for LLK, but for now we are concerned only about LL1. Right? So let's do that for this particular grammar, where starting symbol is capital S, and that derives I capital E T S S prime, where small I, small t, small a, e, b, epsilon, these are all terminals, and capital ones are the non-terminals. Right? So what should be the first step? Correct. So the first step, the question itself contains the answer. The first step is to construct first. The second step is to construct follow. And once you have the first and follow, then you have to build the table. Right? So let's construct first. There is going to be a smaller table and smaller computation maybe, because there are only 3 non-terminals. So first of S is, that should be easy. Yeah. So first of S is the first set of tokens that can appear in any strings derivable from S, and that has to be containing I or A, and therefore I, A are in the first of capital S. Good. What is first of S prime? So E and epsilon. First of the set can contain epsilon. So S primes first contains small e and epsilon. So that seems to be fine. And first of E contains B, that is also given. Right? So this part is okay. Now let's construct the follow sets. So follow of capital S. Once you have the first, you will require. First will be required to construct the follow sets in case there is epsilon, which indeed is the case. So follow of capital S, E and dollar. Okay. Any other suggestions? Everybody got the same answer, E dollar? Okay. Okay, so everybody is getting the same answer. Let's understand why follow of S contains E and dollar. Follow of S should contain first of S prime, right? And follow of S from here also should contain follow of S prime. Right? So we'll have to check follow of S prime also later. But anyway, so here first of S prime contains E and dollar that we have computed, and therefore follow of S should definitely contain E. Follow set does not contain epsilon, and that dollar is anyway going to be here because that is going to be the starting symbol. So after S prime there is only dollar, so therefore this is never going to contain anything else, except that we have to worry about what is going to be follow of S prime. But it will happen that follow of S prime will also not contain anything because S prime is nullable, therefore we should worry about follow of S prime because that can also follow S. But since S prime itself is appearing towards the end of the input, right? Therefore, it will never contain anything else other than this E and all. Right? So that seems to be correct. So follow of S contains E and all. Okay. So let's move ahead. What is follow of S prime? Okay, we have two answers, E dollar and dollar. Okay, dollar. Okay, okay, there seem to be two parties now. Support for both dollar as well as E dollar. Okay. So maybe one of you could explain why that is dollar. So the dollar party could explain why that is dollar. So Sarthak, Anishwar, Akshay, one of you could explain why you will have only dollar in the follow of S prime. Okay. Anybody from the E dollar party want to explain why E dollar is?
Okay, sir, I think I can try.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so basically S has a production which goes from IET S dash
Mm-hmm.
And S you can again from S in that you can again produce to I, E, T, S, S dash.
Mm-hmm.
So S dash should have the first of S dash in its follow set actually,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because you can produce S within it twice to get S dash actually. So
Okay.
S dash should have first of um S dash in its follow. That was the
Okay.
logic,
Sure.
which is E dollar. So
Okay. Sure. Got it. Thanks, Arnav. Since there is no rule in which a symbol appears after S prime. Okay, so that's what Anishwar has said about the dollar. And Said Dheeraj says that follow of S prime contains follow of S. Okay, so let's check that. So we are saying that with whatever we have seen, S prime definitely is going to have dollar because follow of S should be in the follow of S prime. That seems to be fine. Um, okay, and then S prime, the argument that Arnav has given is that S can pump the same string again and again, and therefore it will have IET followed by IETS prime followed by this first S prime, and therefore S prime first S prime gets followed by S prime, and therefore the first of S prime should also be in the follow of S prime. Yeah, how do we do that with whatever we have seen so far? So S prime. Okay, yeah, that seems fine. So we said that S prime is nullable, right? And since S prime is nullable because S prime derives epsilon, therefore whatever follows S, that also is in the follow of S prime. Did I say it correctly? No, I didn't say it correctly. I'm mixing first and follow. Yeah, Naman has written that follow of S prime will have follow of S. That is correct. Follow of S we have computed as E and dollar. Oh yeah, so E and dollar, so both should be present. Yeah, that seems to be fine. That seems to be fine. Yeah, that alone is sufficient to get E and dollar both. So, okay, let's come back. First of S we said is I and A. First of S prime we said is E and epsilon. Follow of S is going to be first of S prime as well as dollar, and therefore E and dollar are there in the follow of S, capital S. And now follow of S prime is going to be follow of S, and that is going to contain both E and dollar, and therefore E and dollar should be there in the, yeah, that seems to be fine. Can we keep the leftmost S prime and derive the S prime on the right to ES? I didn't understand this part. Can we keep the leftmost S prime? So I'm just going to write the string that we are going to generate. So S derives IET followed by IET. S prime, S prime. So if I pump it twice, then I'm going to generate this string where the S prime actually follows S prime. can we keep the leftmost S prime and derive the S prime on the right to ES? We are in LL1, right? So it has to, the second L says that it is the leftmost derivation. So we cannot keep the S prime. But anyway, what the first and follow are independent of that, independent of the left derivation or the right derivation. The first and follow are built for LLK grammars, and therefore any string which you can derive with the grammar, you should be able to, even if you are doing right S prime derivation, rightmost S prime derivation, still you should be able to get the strings that we want, and therefore in any of these strings, if this particular letter E or dollar is going to appear, then we have to add that to the follow set. Right. So is this clear? Any questions on this one? So the dollar party, do they agree that small e will also be in the follow set of S prime? Okay, no. Okay, so maybe Venuvadhu already, can you? Okay, Anishwar agrees. So तुम्हारी पार्टी में फूट पड़ गई है. So let's hear from maybe Venuvadhu already. Why do you disagree? E should be in the follow set of S prime. Okay, Sarthak agrees. Okay, let me say why this rule is true, that follow of S prime will have follow of S. That is because S prime is appearing on the as the rightmost non-terminal for a production of capital S, and therefore whatever follows capital S in the input, that is going to follow the last non-terminal in S. So that is just the rule that we have. I think somebody is talking. Just a minute. This is what we have done earlier, just that it didn't probably come out very explicitly. But anyway, yeah. Venuvadhu Reddy, go ahead.
Sir, because we saw a rule when A gives epsilon, first of A and follow of A should be disjoint.
When A gives epsilon, the first of A and the follow of A should be disjoint. Okay, that seems fine.
So follow of S dollar S prime and follow of S should be disjoint. Already first of S prime has E, so follow of S prime should not contain E.
No. I think the argument that you gave was about the first and follow of A, because A derives epsilon. That seems fine.
Here so, dollar gives epsilon. Sorry, S prime gives epsilon.
S prime gives epsilon, and therefore first and follow of S prime should be different. That's what according to
first of S prime is E comma dollar.
Okay.
So follow of S prime should be only dollar, not E comma dollar.
Well, that will depend upon whether the next non-terminal which can appear after S prime, whether that has first of S is what, right? So it so happened in that example that A deriving epsilon, there is probably the next symbol did not have anything common, right? So we cannot make use of that to say that always it is going to be the case. So think about it in this manner, that can you derive a string? Can you derive a string because of this grammar such that S prime can be followed by a small e? That should be the question that we should ask. If the answer is no, then only dollar should be in the follow set of S prime. If the answer is yes, that small e can appear after S prime in any of these derivations, then small e should be added to the follow set of S prime. Right? And one example that we have given here is that when you pump it twice, S pumped twice, then S prime do appear twice in this derivation, and therefore, and since S prime can derive E capital S, Therefore, small e can appear in the follow of S prime. I'm not sure if you found the argument convincing. So, okay, whatever we have done so far, that was probably specific to a particular example from where we cannot make general conclusions unless it is actually correct. So, let's look at it from the perspective of only the meaning of follow. Follow of S prime should contain all the terminals which are there in any of the derivations which are possible according to this grammar, right? So S prime can have all these strings, right? Where S prime and S prime can occur together, I mean consecutively. And since the second S prime can derive small e, I mean start from small e, therefore we will have to say that capital S prime can be followed by small e. Okay, so yeah, Shriram, I will state this again, that because S prime appears as the last non-terminal in this production, therefore follow of S prime will always contain follow of S, right? And maybe it is happening in this case, but the order in which we perform these follow sets, these can matter. For example, if I say that initially I have not computed the follow set of capital S, which means that it is empty, and I derive the follow set of capital S prime, I'll just probably get, I'll not get anything because follow of S is empty, and therefore follow of S prime will also be empty, right? Then when I go to capital S and derive its follow set, I find out that E and dollar both are in the follow set of capital S. At that time, I have to go back and update the follow set of S prime. Okay. So therefore, follow set of S prime as well as S should contain E dollar, and follow set of capital E, well, that seems to be easy because E appears only in that first production, and therefore only T appears in the follow set of capital E. Right? Okay, so now that we have computed first and follow, if there are any questions, please feel free to ask. There is a good discussion. The grammar is ambiguous. Naman and Sarthak are saying we can derive strings without requiring follow of S prime. Okay. Can you prove that using the parsing table? So, Sarthak and Naman, as soon as we say that the grammar is ambiguous, this particular LL1 grammar is ambiguous, according to the parsing table, what should happen? A cell will have more than one production. That is correct. Right. Okay. So let's fill up the parsing table. So I request everybody to now make use of this first and follow to fill up the table. The rows are going to be S prime and capital E, right? Yeah, capital E, and the columns are going to contain all these terminals I, T, A, E, B, etc. and dollar. So let's fill that up and let's check if Naman and Sarthak and Nishchit are correct. Okay, I'm going to ask some of you about what you got. Right. Sai Chaitanya, what is SI entry?
Sir,
Okay, I think I had it.
Go ahead.
sir, can you repeat once?
I am asking what is the S, capital S, small I entry in the passing table?
Okay.
Meanwhile, Kuldeep, can you tell me what is S, small a entry? So Naman has written that he has gotten multiple entries in that S prime row. Kuldeep, what is S A entry? Yeah, please note that the class is for you and not for me. So,
Make sure that you spend some time in the classwork so that it will improve your understanding. I'm not taking any attendance, so there is no real point other than the understanding in the class for which you should attend the class. All right, so the parsing table should look something like this. As some of you have pointed out, the S prime E entry should have two productions listed in them. The SI entry has to have something starting from small I, and SA entry has to have S deriving A, right? These are the two productions. S dollar is accept, then S prime E, we'll discuss about that. S prime epsilon is going to be because of the dollar being in the follow set of S prime, as well as in E, right? So what's, okay, I'll come to that. E deriving B is going to be there in E and B's column. So that part is also okay. Let's look at what happens in this S prime E entry. So because E and dollar are in the follow set of S prime, so S prime's first is small e, and therefore S prime deriving ES must be the rule present in this S prime E entry. That part is fine. But S prime is also nullable, and therefore we have to look at the follow set of S prime, which is E dollar, and therefore we add S prime deriving E in the E dollar entries of S prime, and therefore it appears here as well as here. Right? And as soon as it appears here, there are two productions. Therefore, it is not clear whether you should apply one production or the other whenever you are recursively descending into capital S prime and you are seeing E on the input. Right? Any questions on this one? Okay. If you don't have any questions on this, you can post it if you have. I have one definite question for you. What is this graph? Okay. So I hope some of you, like Sarthak, are able to see that. that this is actually an if-else grammar. So that small I is if, capital E is some expression, T is then, capital S is arbitrary statement, S prime is another statement which derives else, right? So that E becomes an else, and S prime can also be epsilon, which means that the else is optional. And if you have such a grammar, then LL1 parser is unable to parse such sentences, right? Unless you put some sort of end marker like braces or essentially that else part you should be able to distinguish. Even if you put braces, it can still be a problem. But else part, as soon as that becomes optional, right, that means that it can derive epsilon, S prime deriving epsilon. That is the problematic part. Okay, so that is interesting. Yeah, I'll just briefly cover this before we move on to the bottom of parsing. Yeah, so programming is for humans, right? Although there are program generators also, but by and large programming is done by humans, and therefore how the language looks like, that becomes important, right? So you must have heard of that story where that king is asking about his future to some astrologer, and the astrologer, one of the astrologers says that your future is very black, in the sense that it's a little pessimistic, and he says what happens. So he says that you will have to see the death of each of your relatives, and he decides to put that astrologer into jail, and then another astrologer comes, right? And the astrologer says that king, you have a very bright future. He says why? He says that because you have the longest life amongst your relatives, right? So your language starts mattering, and especially when it comes to humans, it's definitely important, and we have seen some examples of this earlier. But just to give an example in the context of programming languages, right? So it probably suffices if you don't put the opening parenthesis in a for loop, right? Even if I do not have that opening parenthesis, I should be able to parse this using similar context-free grammar, because what's going to happen is that for itself is kind of an important token which is going to tell you that the rest of the syntax how it is expected, right? And therefore you will be able to parse this even if that opening parenthesis is not there, right? So it does not add any ambiguity if you remove that opening parenthesis, but it doesn't look good, right? And therefore that looking good is something which you should be able to, I mean, we have to worry about sometimes while designing a language. This is just and off the point, because you will be designing probably some language of your choice sometime, at least some of you. Okay, one small homework which you could do is that assume that there is a domain of 20 numbers, 1 to 20, right? And these are not digits, these are strings, ONE, TW or like that, right? And then there are 4 operators, plus, minus, mult and div. Right? So what I want you to write is a grammar. What it does is it performs the parsing of the language which involves a loop corresponding to this. The language should look something like this, where should be able to generate something like this for num1 in 1 to 20, then num2 in 1 to. So there is a nesting, arbitrary nesting possible. So I have this num1, num2, num3, num4, right, as 4 loops, and then I have different operators also in a set, specified in a set. So there is a range specified by 1 to 20, and then there is a set corresponding to operators. So both these need to be supported. And what I am going to do is ask if num1 of num2 is the same as num3 of num4. Right? So we have to convert that string into the number, interpret the operator, and based on that, so I'm going to go over the operators, right? So this is more like you are defining the op1 could be plus, minus, mult and divide, right? Just by looking at that string within the for loop. And if these match, for example, I should be able to say 3 plus 1 equals 2 plus 2, something like that. Right? Then you have to print all these combinations. And the second part of the homework is that if you replace that equal to, that is from numeric equality to an anagram, what is the output that you get? And if you find some interesting output, please let me know. Okay, so we'll stop here. Any questions? So we had some interesting discussion about follow of S prime. I suggest that people who still have confusion should go back, look at it, and if you still have some question, please feel free to ask either on Moodle or you can just mail me. All right. This afternoon we'll have. I mean, there is no specific lab as such, but those of you who have some questions about the assignment, we'll have a discussion on that. I'll also ask the TAs to be present so that they'll be able to answer your questions. All right. See you then.